My name is Peter Bridgewater, and I've been involved in protected areas for about 40 to nearly 50 years, having managed the Australian National Parks and Wildlife Service, been involved with UNESCO's Man in Biosphere program and the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. I have some concerns about the 30 by 30 idea. It has become now a very political issue, being promoted widely by governments, accepted by the G7, and promoted by the G7. And it sounds really good, except you really need to look at what is behind this 30 by 30 idea. The idea that we could have 30% of the lands and waters of the planet by 2030 in a quote-unquote protected state is frankly pie in the sky. We have 17% already, and everybody is very proud of this. The problem is that the resources and the knowledge for managing those areas that are so-called protected are far from complete. So many protected areas do not have adequate resources, and this includes protected areas in developed countries as well. We are not simply talking about less developed countries. There is a new idea also that was promoted from the 10th COP meeting of the CBD, and that is the OECMs. This in essence is a whole range of so-called other areas than protected areas, which are still nonetheless somehow part of the protected area family. Again, there is little sense in this, and it serves only to divert attention from what seems to be a particular grab of the areas and the ideas. We know also from the report of the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services that Indigenous peoples and local communities, the lands and waters on which they live, cover about 25% of the planet. We also know that that 25% has the best quality biodiversity and the best managed biodiversity of any areas. And that includes many well-known so-called protected areas. So there is a complete conflict between an aim that sounds wonderful and the reality that already exists. What we need, in fact, is landscape stewardship and seascape stewardship over all our lands and waters, whether they have a designation or whether they don't. Because unless you actually set protected areas in a well-managed landscape or seascape, they're not effectively protected at all. Ideas that are also being promoted, including rewilding, wilderness, and so on, are simply ideas of urban elites. They are not practical ideas, and they are not producing results that in the end will help achieve either biodiversity conservation or continued effective delivery of ecosystem services. We may in fact find ourselves with dysfunctional landscapes, dysfunctional seascapes. The whole wilderness issue is a real problem, and I'm sure well known to many. I recall in my time being involved with Kakadu National Park in the north of Australia. One of the local Aboriginal representatives on the Kakadu Park Board of Management said to me when the board was considering whether additional areas within the park should be designated as wilderness, "I don't know what you mean by wilderness. Where you're talking about, there are rock art sites there that you haven't seen yet. There are graveyards there. And in essence, it's our dining room. For me, wilderness is the Sydney Central Business District." And that, for me, summed up in a most eloquent way how foolish this notion of wilderness actually is. So the world is on the wrong way, the wrong calls for 30 by 30. What we need is, dare I say it, less protection and more stewardship. And the best knowledge and the best people who can engage in this stewardship our indigenous peoples and local communities. We need, therefore, better conversations between the urban populations of the planet and indigenous peoples and local communities living still well on the lands and waters of their ancestors. Thank you.